You are listening to the Novel Writing Podcast, episode 155. I'm your host, Colleen Mitchell. Grab a cup, cozy up, and let's get to writing. Today's episode is a summary of my thoughts and takeaways from attending the Author Nation 2024 conference in Las Vegas, Nevada, just a couple weeks ago. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the conference, this year was the inaugural conference after the organizers took over existing contracts from 20 Books to 50K. 20 Books to 50K had been running at the same time and in the same hotel for several years, but officially retired after their 2023 conference. Author Nation took its place with different leadership, though a lot of the same volunteers, speakers, and attendees participated this year. This was my first time ever going to a writing conference, so I didn't quite know what to expect, but I went in with curiosity and an open mind. Author Nation is intended to be a gathering of authors, both published and unpublished, who are looking for community, professional development across craft, marketing, production, distribution, and so much more. Also present were a bunch of industry exhibitors from brands as young as a few months and as old as a few decades. The exhibitors included Ingram Spark, Lulu, Book Vault, Amazon, Atticus, Pro Writing Aid, Written Word Media, Curios, Sound Booth Theater, BookFunnel, and plenty more. The conference itself was Monday through Friday, with Monday being the main industry expo plus hands-on software sessions, and Friday being the rave reader-author signing event paired with several genre panels. The main conference sessions from Tuesday through Thursday covered a wide variety of topics relevant to growing and succeeding as an indie author. While many attendees were either traditionally published or hybrid, meaning both traditional and indie in this context, the vast majority of the audience were indie, and the sessions were all pretty much geared toward indie. My overall takeaways. First, it was really valuable to be in the same physical space as other indie authors, because the way we make progress or solve problems in indie publishing is by being friends and acquaintances with other indie authors, both in and out of your genre. Just sitting next to someone in one of the sessions was enough to spark conversation, identify commonalities, and trade business cards. Second, as authors, there is always something we can learn from another author. Third, it was important to go into the conference with the focus on what I needed for my own author journey within the next 3 to 6 months. That meant I wasn't attending super advanced selling strategy classes and was more focused on the productivity, craft, some software, and more beginning marketing classes. And this actually worked out because a lot of the things that I picked up were things that I could share with our coaching and critique group afterward. Fourth, because indies come from all backgrounds, right across all genres, and have vastly differing life circumstances and goals, there is no one correct path to success. There were some panels where 2 different authors had completely opposite ways of operating, but each method worked for that author. Fifth, the best marketing is writing the next book, especially for newer authors. And lastly, don't be afraid to ask for help. The indie community is friendly, collaborative, and overall really helpful and supportive. My top 3 favorite sessions. Number 1, writing fight scenes. The instructor, Carla Hoke, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, talked about everything from self-defense in the real world to how a character can, in fact, bring a knife to a gunfight and win. This was by far my favorite session, and she has 2 books out about writing fight scenes called Fight Right, that's W-R-I-T-E, and Fight Right Round 2. What was most helpful for me about this was that she offered to help people walk through their fight scenes to write them better, and I 100% took her up on that and got some practical fixes for an important battle scene. Number 2, revising the second draft and beyond. It was really helpful for me to see a multi-book author's approach to revising, especially since the speaker, Elle Penelope, is just as type A as me when it comes to planning, organizing, and tracking. I'm really looking forward to seeing what parts of her process I can apply to my future books. The thing that stuck with me the most is how much she prepares before actually starting a rewrite. And number 3, sustainable productivity. This talk by Kevin McLaughlin was probably the most popular one I went to, and for good reason. As authors, we all want to be highly productive, but also not burn out. The main takeaways I got from this session were 1, don't push yourself past your limits. 2, build up stamina over time for things like exercise, mindfulness, and daily word counts. And 3, tracking your results is the only way to measure performance over time and also know when you've reached the point of diminishing returns with increasing your stamina limits. While these 3 talks were definitely my favorite, I have a lot of action items from other sessions that I went to as well. Now, what I wish I'd done differently. And I think this is a good thing to do for everything that you participate in. Understanding what went well, what didn't go well, and what you want to do differently are all great evaluation techniques no matter what you're doing. So the first thing that I wish I'd done differently is that I wish I'd talked to more authors each day. I'm naturally introverted, which I think most authors are, but I didn't feel like I talked to quote unquote enough people or made really that many connections. That perspective will probably change over time, since I doubt I'd be able to build lasting relationships with a lot of authors at once, rather than focusing on a few high-quality connections. I wish I'd organized my contacts better at the end of each day, cataloging who I'd talked to, how I'd met them, what they wrote, so that I don't have this pile of business cards at the end of the week and can't remember half of who they belong to. Many of my conversations were just an exchange of business cards based on the fact that we both wrote in the same or similar genres. And I wish I'd traded cards with panelists and speakers. I see this as a missed opportunity, since there were plenty of panelists who could have been amazing contacts who are much further along in the journey than I am. So overall, Author Nation was a great experience. If you can afford the trip to Las Vegas, I highly recommend taking advantage of the opportunity to connect with other indie authors and get some top-notch professional development at the same time. And before I wrap up, I have a funny story from Author Nation, and that's that the only author whose name I recognized going into any of the panels or into Rave was A.G. Riddle. A.G. Riddle is a high-concept sci-fi author with 10 books out. When I first got my Kindle in 2018, his Atlantis series was among the first books that I bought, and I had read them and I really loved them. I went to a few of the panels he was on at the conference, and then I went to his table at Rave to tell him that story about the Kindle, and he ended up gifting me copies of the 2 books he'd brought. So, Jerry, if you're listening to this, thanks again for being such an approachable and great person. So that is it for today's episode. Thank you for joining me, and remember, the first draft is supposed to be garbage. Thanks for listening to the Novel Writing Podcast. If you're ready to stop struggling and start finishing your novel, check out the 60-Day Novel Writing Challenge. It's a step-by-step program designed for solo writers to complete their first draft with clarity and focus. Visit the link in the description to learn more.